Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. A group of archaeologists is seen exploring the vast Namib Desert in Africa. Suddenly, a series of explosions occur, and the archaeologist's seismograph registers the disturbance in the ground. The team then discusses the possible discovery of a volcanic vein, but another member argues that there are no volcanoes in the area, which means a volcanic vein there is unlikely, and consequently, there are no diamonds. What the seismograph captured was not making any sense, so the trio decides to check the location of the explosion. As they approach the site, they come across a kind of tribal totem made of sticks and bones. The trio pauses for a second to observe the bizarre scene and then moves on. Later, they arrive at the site of the explosion and see a large piece of sandstone with an unusual lump formation, which is not common in the desert. One of the archaeologists picks up a small pickaxe and strikes the sandstone to collect a sample. With each strike, he inadvertently creates a hole and peers inside when suddenly, a strange creature pulls the man inside, and he screams in terror. After that, the scene cuts to Vancouver, where we see a systems analyst and explorer named Zach receiving a temperature drop alert in a laboratory due to a system failure in an Antarctic module. He and his assistant, Mel, quickly work on a solution to prevent the other scientists from freezing to death. With just seconds remaining, Zach takes a gamble and instructs Mel to override the system, stabilizing it and restoring the temperature, saving the scientists. His boss then approaches them, hands Zach a plane ticket, and informs him that a different area is looking for a systems analyst. Later, we see a taxi dropping Zach in the middle of nowhere, in the African desert, and driving away. He spots a local selling various strange materials, approaches, and with limited options, Zach asks if the man has something for a headache. To his surprise, the man hands him an extra strong analgesic, just what he needed after a long journey. Soon after, a truck arrives, and the driver greets Zach, signaling him to get in the truck. They then arrive at a closed facility of Eland, a mining company based in Africa amid the desert. Zach enters a station to check in with security and meets the attendant, Mickey, and an older man. The reception wasn't the warmest, but he quickly adapts. After a while, two other men named Carl and Titus enter the room. Mickey starts inspecting Zach's luggage when she notices a strange device that he himself calls Charlie. It's an underground analyzer whose main function is to find water up to 300 meters deep. While Mickey looks for a diary, the older colleague stuffs the diary into his pants, catching Mickey's attention and making inappropriate jokes. After that, Zach is notified that a group of miners has gone missing, and they will attempt to find them along the way. Mickey, Zach, and Carl are accompanied by Titus, Kurt, and Magda, each carrying their own weapons. Zach asks why so many weapons, and Carl explains that rebels try to attack them, thinking they have diamonds. Once everything is ready, they set out and traverse the inhospitable desert in search of their missing colleagues. After a few hours of searching, Mickey spots a truck. They take a look and find two of their co-workers already dead, as if they had been exposed there for a long time, with their bones almost dry. Carl suspects that the third missing man might have been the killer. Titus signals to the others that he's found something. When they rush to his position, they see footprints and track the suspected killer on foot. After a few moments, Titus makes a brief stop and tells Carl that when they started following the tracks, there were 2 feet, but suddenly, there are now 4, indicating that it started bipedal, and then somehow was walking on all fours like some dog. Something very bizarre happened. They soon arrive at a desolate place with several strange totems, like the one that one of the researchers was seen looking at. Zach tries to touch the figure on the staff, but Titus taps his shoulders, stops him, and tells him that it's a warning sign. Then, Titus instructs everyone to move on. The team continues to follow the tracks until they find a skull and then a body. Kurt takes a closer look at the carcass and the bones, and then remembers that one of their missing colleagues had a motorcycle accident, causing him to limp. Kurt and Mickey think that the corpse may belong to the third colleague Carl suspected of being the killer of the other 2 they already found, as one of the bones has a metal plate indicating he underwent surgery, just like this third colleague. However, Carl doesn't believe it's his colleague's corpse and insists that he must still be on the run. Magda tells Carl to stop the pursuit and deliver the fuel to the camp as ordered. They then decide to camp there as it's only a few minutes until nightfall. Late at night, the group is fast asleep, except for Zach. He couldn't sleep, pondering on how he ended up there since he wasn't a field analyst but only worked in laboratories. To keep himself sane, he decides to sand surf in the middle of the night. At one point, while he was distracted, he gets a scare when McKee appears and taps his shoulders, telling him that the noise he was making and the constant beeping of his soil analyzer device were preventing her from sleeping. She sits beside Zach and hugs him to keep warm, with a hint of flirtation. After a brief conversation, McKee returns to the truck. Next, Zach's meter lights up and starts beeping frantically. When he looks to the side, he sees a horrifying creature, so he manages to run back to the car and wake everyone up. Zach explains what he saw, and McKee notices that the corpse is missing. Carl suspects Zach and starts questioning him about the whereabouts of the corpse, but Zach claims he didn't do anything. On the other hand, Titus whispers a strange word. When asked about it, Titus explains that it's a creature referred to by him and his culture as the Mother of the Sand, which takes all lives to sustain itself and live forever. Not only that, he says that this creature has the ability to turn everyone against each other, simply by separating them. The next morning, they follow a new trail, and when Kurt looks through his rifle scope, he sees a bizarre bipedal humanoid walking back and forth, almost like a shadow. Carl takes Kurt's rifle and aims at the creature that killed their friends and shoots it. However, when he hits the being, it completely disintegrates. The team goes there and finds only bones. No one can explain what that was, except Titus. He shares that when he was a boy, something similar happened. A shepherd wandered off, and when they searched, all they found was his completely fleshless skull. After sharing this with Zach, they climb into the truck to leave, but the truck experiences a strong short circuit, severely damaging its entire wiring system, rendering it unable to function. To make matters worse, their radio communicator in that location doesn't get any signal, they can only hear some static noises. A few hours later, a plane flies by, and Zach panics, thinking the pilot didn't notice them, while the others remain calm. Magda tells him to calm down because they are sure the pilot saw them and will send a truck to rescue them in a day or at most 2. Later, Magda inflates an emergency tent and distributes supplies. On the other hand, Kurt collects the bones and puts them in the truck. He also installs some lights around. In the middle of the night, Kurt wakes up Titus, saying it's his turn to watch. He then takes a sleeping bag and goes to rest, while Titus sits on a rock and keeps an eye on everyone during the night. At one point, he hears something and tries to see what it is. We also see that Zach's device starts beeping and sending some kind of signal. At that moment, Titus tries to wake up Kurt, who doesn't respond, so he opens Kurt's sleeping bag and finds him trembling, with the skin of his face stripped off and a strange black substance taking over his body. Titus quickly screams for help, and suddenly his arm is also caught and corroded by the substance. Carl reacts quickly by shooting the black substance, which looks like grains of sand, as it moves toward him. Meanwhile, Zach and the others load Titus into the truck. Soon, Carl realizes that shooting it with bullets is entirely futile, so he grabs a can of gasoline and pours it on the strange creature. He then climbs into the truck, takes out his lighter, and is about to throw it on the creature to burn it. Magda points a gun at Carl to stop him, saying that if he does that, it will put everyone at risk because they are directly above thousands of liters of fuel that could explode and kill them all at once. Zach interrupts them by saying that the creature is moving away. Magda and McKee tend to Titus's injuries and realize that he has lost a lot of blood and will only have a chance of survival if taken to the hospital. At this moment, Zach realizes that the device is picking up something, so he gets off the truck and pours fuel on the sand, thinking it might repel the monster in some way. It's then when he looks to the side and sees Carl pointing the rifle in his direction and tells him to duck because the creature was behind him. Carl shoots and hits the thing, which disintegrates but attempts to reform and move away. Carl tries to shoot again, but Zach stops him, saying it was already leaving, and it's better that way because they didn't know what that thing was capable of. Carl then attacks Zach and starts beating him until McKee arrives and stops them from continuing the fight. She yells at them, saying that to survive, they should work together or it's over. Given Titus's condition, time is essential, so Carl suggests taking him to the nearest outpost about 40 kilometers away. Magda disagrees, saying they couldn't move a big man through the desert heat for 40 kilometers and suggests leaving Titus with her in the truck while they go search for help. By morning, Zach, Carl, and McKee walk through the desolate, scorching desert for hours without seeing anything but sand as far as the eye can see. At one point, Zach sees a reading on his device coming from further ahead, so they walk towards it until the reading becomes stronger. However, while Zach was still explaining how his device could help them, Carl suddenly sees a sandstorm coming towards them rapidly. So, the three of them hold on tightly in an attempt to survive. After the storm passes, they free themselves from the sand and find the fuel almost empty and the device destroyed. Later that night, they find a place to rest. Zach pours gasoline on the sand and goes around to prevent the creature from approaching. They rest under a dead tree with their backs against each other. Then, Carl turns on his flashlight and sees the thing slowly approaching them. They are in shock when they realize that the monster has taken on the face of Magda, meaning it had already devoured Magda and Titus. The creature tries to get closer to them but can't due to the gasoline spilled on the sand. The next day, the trio wakes up hearing a radio transmission noise. This means that the first team's truck we saw at the beginning of the movie is nearby. They head towards the sound and find the truck, as well as the piece of sandstone. Zach enters and analyzes the formation inside. He explains to the others that the creature is actually made up of a species of extremely dangerous ants, a primordial species that should have been extinct for thousands of years, and they were using human bones to take on a humanoid form and survive. Shortly after, the old man we saw working with McKee at the beginning also arrives at the scene to investigate the murders. He suspects that the three of them are responsible for the deaths of the first team, who were diamond prospectors, and the others who were killed afterward. He believes they killed the others for the diamonds. The trio tries to explain what really happened, but the stubborn old man doesn't understand. The three are handcuffed in the truck, but Carl knocks out the old man, and they manage to escape before reaching the prison. They agree to stop the creature and deduce that it was likely searching for a nest to start a new colony, so they head to the old mine. Later, they arrive at the mine, and Zach manages to get an old generator working. They then hunt down the terrible creature, which doesn't take long to emerge from the shadows, and they start shooting at it. Carl is hit by a piece of iron and gets his leg trapped, but before the monster can kill him, Zach fires his weapon, diverting the creature's attention, and it runs towards him. However, Zach notices a deep hole and at the last moment, he moves aside, and the creature falls into it. Carl and McKee arrive where Zach was. And just when they thought it was all over, the creature suddenly grabs Carl's leg. McKee and Zach try to pull Carl back, but realizing that there isn't much of a choice, Carl takes out nitroglycerin from his pocket, sacrifices himself with an explosion. With the explosion, the entire place starts collapsing. McKee and Zach find a strange organism, which they realize is the controlling brain of the creature, something like a queen of the colony. Zach stabs it, and the two quickly run out of the mine, just in time before everything collapses on top of them. Out there, they realize that the old man had also fallen victim to the monster. The movie then ends with Zach and McKee saying goodbye, where Zach places a strange crate in the taxi that came to pick up McKee, and inside it, we can see the central organism of the creature, indicating that this problem will still persist worldwide.